Hello and welcome. I am especially excited about today. The minute I knew I wanted to create a podcast, I had our guest today in my heart to connect with so that I can share her incredible, unique wisdom with you. You may not all know, but I started my whole psychic journey doing hand analysis or palmistry as it's known. And that's why I'm so excited about our guest today, because she is an expert and she's the only one I know who is this kind of expert. So today we welcome Lisa Greenfield.
Thank you.
Yay!
Just love being here. It is such a joy to talk to you. You're like oxygen for the hot air balloon. Everything just goes up and up and up and up.
Well, that's why I work on grounding every single day. And I encourage everybody else to do that.
Yes, particularly these days, right?
Yes, absolutely. So Lisa is so many things. I was talking to her to try to get a handle on her title. Like, I have a lot of things in my tool belt too. And that's part of why it's so exciting for me to share Lisa's wisdom with you, because Lisa is multifaceted and she has a lot of divinatory tools. She calls herself an intuitive coach, like I call myself an intuitive counselor and happiness coach. So, because she has a lot to offer: palmistry, hand analysis, tarot, astrology, human design, all the things. They're all divinatory tools that help people with what, Lisa?
To understand the map of them.
Yeah.
It really is about map reading. And I've been fascinated with maps since I was very young. And truly, these tools are just map reading tools for who a person is and how you can get a landscape that you can play and create in.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious how you got started and which was first, like which came first? The hands. For me too. See, you could all see my high five.
It was so funny. My parents were really restrictive on TV, which I'm now so grateful for.
I know.
And so we would go to libraries and we would read all the books in a library and have to go. I think we went through 3 libraries in 5 years. But my brother brought home a book on palmistry and he used me, to kind of test it out. I was fascinated. I was 13 years old and I just went, ooh, I love this.
It's
and
fascinating.
He moved on to the next title and I stayed with it and read everything I could get my hands on.
No pun intended. Or maybe the pun was intended. I hope the pun was intended, because puns are my love language.
Oh, good to know.
Yes. My husband, I said to him, I said, like bringing me flowers every day, you bring me a pun every day. Like, it's like,
oh, I love that.
It's the coolest thing.
It makes all the difference when somebody speaks your love language. Way tends to be in your hands.
Well, tell us how your love language is in your hands. How is that?
Our heart line is the top line on your horizontal line on your hand, and it's a top line for a reason. Okay. So we start at the bottom and we move all the way up. This is where we meet the world. So the heart line is the first place. It's like, it's like, all right, this carries our emotional set point, and it's learned in childhood, and you can see what mom taught you, what dad taught you. Sometimes you're like them. Sometimes you do anything to be different than them, but that's the influence that comes in. Left hand is the receptive, right hand is the active. Okay. And so your love language is going to tell you where you started out, what makes you feel safe. And then the other hand will tell you and how you act on it. Like sometimes, particularly most people have similarities between the two, but sometimes you have very different. And so you may have been trained to give what you want to receive instead of asking for what you want.
And you could see that in somebody's hand?
Yeah.
How?
You'd be amazed at how much. Based on where their set point, their heart line sits. Say it sits under it ends under an inside finger instead of, I don't know if you can see this, but mine makes it all the way out, but the darkest part is here. So when the darkest part is, under that middle line, you tend to be a little more internal. You have to have time to recognize what you feel, want, need before you can express it. If it makes it to an outside edge, you have an easier time expressing it.
Wow. And I remember some are curved and some are straight. What does it mean if mine is super curvy, like my hair?
I love it. Curved are, those are there's travelers and there's tourists. Travelers are going from point A to point B and they need efficiency. That's the straighter lines. If, it's like, that's what brings down their anxiety. That's what feels good. That's what they're here to accomplish. The curvier lines are tourists. They're here to stop and take in the experience, the sight.
That's so my life too. Like I'm not I've been to a lot of places, but I don't like to go to a lot of places. I like to be in one place and like take it in and la la la. So for people looking at I'm sure I hope everyone's going to be looking at that top line of their hand. If it's straight, it means they're like,
it tends to be more efficiency. It brings down your emotional anxiety to get mile markers, like passing cars on the freeway. It's like, oh, you get results. You know that you're moving emotionally in a particular direction. Whereas, if it's more curved, you actually want to not only take things in, but express it. You want to tell people, it's like, oh, I saw this or I experienced it.
And of course, I don't even pass cars on the freeway. That's how curvy mine, because I walk everywhere and I don't drive. But you're in LA and I'm from New York. So
but trust me, I actually don't own a car. I walk, so I'm an anomaly here and I prefer to be in nature. But
yeah, that's nice.
Bible.
I knew you were a girl after my own heart line. So anyway, I should just say that, a girl after my own heart line. So people, and what if it like lands like between your two fingers or under one? Because I'm sure people are looking at their hands, right? And saying, okay, mine is between these two fingers. What?
Gotcha looking. Yeah, I said, I love to say
looking.
That. Gotcha looking.
Yeah. Eyes up here.
Yeah. It's like eyes front, but no, I want people looking. And you're right. I think that's such a good question. When it hits in the middle, and by the way, the middle is like the middle between the two fingers, but also the knuckle, the highest point on the knuckle. If you draw that through, that's the midpoint between high and low and as well. So it's both vertical and horizontal. I don't know if I lost you there, but it's like, let's go to, if it's just between, if you drew a line, I'm going to draw in my hands here. If you drew a line and it ends somewhere on that midline between the two fingers, it means that you pull from both. It's like going back and forth between two channels that you love. Okay. So it's like, that's what happens when your heart line ends there. Now, the midline, there's also the horizontal midline.
Yeah, so if it ends does it end under people's middle fingers sometimes?
If it ends behind this line, then you are more of an internal processor. And yet at the same time, you still, if it curves up, if it's in this area, you still
people listening, this being the middle finger.
The middle finger curving up towards the fingers. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you've got a curved line, but it curves up and ends under the middle fingers. That's considered air, which by the way correlates with astrology. If it curves up, but ends under your first finger, more under your first finger, that's fire. Mm. Okay, so fire and air are those curved up heart lines, and they just have to go past that midpoint on the horizontal line. Now, if it stays lower than that, okay, if it stays lower than that midline,
like toward the thumb more.
Yeah, but under that first, still ends under that first finger, that's water. And if it's short and straight, ends under that middle finger or earlier, then it's earth. So you've got the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water.
So you had told me before our call that before I hit record, so yes. you didn't get to hear the delightful, juicy conversation we had even before, but we're going to share as much as we can. Yeah. You had explained to me because you do astrology and you said, well, palmistry is astrology.
Yes.
Can you share what that means?
Absolutely. I was delighted to learn because I started with reading palms when I was 13 years old.
And you did, wait, before we get on from that, I just want something I wanted to circle back to. Did you ever stop studying palmistry, or you've been studying? Wow.
Decades.
You must have a very strong destiny line.
I do have a strong fate line, but I have a stronger, a Pluto line, which is, there's something called a game changer.
Oh.
I'll get to that. But you, my love, it's like you've got the magician's mark, which is so fun when you get into the gift markings. But that heart is what attracts things in. Okay. And earth, air, fire, and water will all be kind of like the gateway that it'll usher it in intuitively, or it'll usher it in physically, but you also have an underground game changer, which is a Pluto marking.
Oh, Pluto's all over my birth chart too. So it's interesting that, because my sun is conjunct Pluto and the moon, which is so much fun.
But here's what's interesting. You're playing out your Saturn line more than in your hands. You're emphasizing your Saturn more than your Pluto. It doesn't mean that it isn't there. But what I love about, palmistry is the 3D map of your birth chart. It tells you what you're doing with it. At the birth chart, it's that 2D, here's the horizon, starting point. This is what was on paper, and in the sky, obviously. But it's like you can triangulate. You can use that information from that astrology. Then you look at the hands and you start to see not just what the potential in your chart is, but where you're acting it out, which you've then got muscle memory.
Yeah.
Power.
Because each finger, right, is a different planet, and each part of the palm represents. Can you talk to people about that? I'd love for people to even just get a sense of, because we always think of the planets as out there, right? But here they are, right here.
Yeah, your pointer finger is Jupiter. Okay, so that is.
Dun, dun, dun.
And don't forget, we've got our thumb, which is will, is the top. Then we've got logic is the second, knuckle. And then the Venus is the base, that fleshy base. But when you've got your desire, your logic, and your will, along with Jupiter, that pointer finger, you've got starter pistols. It's the ability to make things happen.
That's great. Yeah. And don't you like when you are in person reading someone's palm, don't you like touch their fleshy part to see their can I just touch your mound of Venus, please?
No, and I have to tell you, when I was a stockbroker, there are certain terms in that you have to be very careful. It's like, well, I put a straddle on, or something like that. And it's the same thing in palmistry. It's like, yes, oh, that's a very good mound of Venus. And it's like,
no, you don't want to. People will have Venus envy. So,
Exactly. So yes, but they all, Jupiter, you've got Saturn. Saturn is the one that splits the hand in the middle. It's like the axis on a globe, the globe that spins. That Saturn line is that center point, because you've got your, Jupiter, and you've got logic and will over here on one side. You've got creativity, which is the ring finger is Apollo, or Mars, okay, creativity, and then Mercury, the little finger, okay? So it's like, oh, you've got your creative arts and communication over here, and you've got your ability to then put it into play with your first two fingers. Well, the center, right down the center, is your ability to hold your course when there's obstacles, challenges. How well do you meet them? Okay. And how many of them are you going to meet? Sometimes you showed up to be Hercules, and it's just like, you're not being punished. The universe isn't being harsh. You chose a strong Saturn, and Kari, you chose a strong Saturn. So it's like, okay, you test your, I
chose a hard Saturn, not necessarily a strong. I chose a Saturn that needs to be developed, but
what I see in your hands with the gift markings is, it's the place that requires attention is the one that grows, that builds. It's like going to the gym multiple times. the longer you go to the gym, the more, muscle and discipline you build.
Yeah.
It does make it strong. I'd be more concerned weak Saturn has a little bit harder time. You've got a defined will. You've got the strong will in your thumb. You've got all the will you need to apply yourself to anything. Your bigger challenge is to do it in the moment rather than we're so tied to that linear right hand task specific that wants to map at 100 feet, 1,000 feet, 2,500 feet and measure your progress. And it's just like, and you're not here, you said you're curved, you're a tourist. It's like, there's no measuring this by any.
Yeah.
So it's that transformational tension, the part of you that thinks, oh, I am so outside the norm, but I want to belong.
Yeah.
We're hardwired to belong.
Yeah. And even like, so I have this, kind of pinky. I remember this and I've seen a lot of people like, sometimes they'll show like celebrities like waving. It'll be like that, like the pinky that's just like, do you have that too?
Yeah.
I was actually admiring the space in your fingers before, but like the pinky, that's cool that you could do that. But the pinky that kind of like the rogue pinky, right? Like there's people who have the rogue pinky. Can you explain what that is?
What you've got with that is this is part of, but that also goes with your magician's mark in your hand. So you've got the pinky and you've got the magician's mark. The M, we're all wired to have our senses where we intuit something, which means if we simply sense beyond our lived experience. It's like, I don't know what's around the corner. Can't see it, haven't been there, but there's something around the corner. Then our heart, which says, well, I really want to know what's wrong. Like, I just feel this pull, Third and only then does the mind come in to plot out how to get from here to there around the corner safely. And then finally the body acts on it. But magicians, you have an easier time than most operating in those, it's like you sense it, you feel it, you plan, and then you act on it. Most people that's only 13% of the population. 87% of the population, particularly in the Western world, are backing in mind first. Figure out what they can and can't do. And the mind is not supposed to decide that.
So how does someone see these special, like, magician marking? Or like, what are some of the markings that you see?
Well, magician's mark is one of the most, it's only 13%, but it's one of the most potent and it's one of the most talked about. Some people say it means marriage. Some people say it means money, but it's like, it's magic. And it's one of these where because you're intuiting, feeling, thinking, acting, you can manifest. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's where your fate line, that hard Saturn you were talking about. But it doesn't have to just be that. It can be the Pluto line. It can be an Apollo line. There's multiple different vertical lines that can make a crossbar between your heart and your headline, and sometimes even your lifeline, and make a double M.
So we have a line of fate that what comes up from like the bottom of the palm. Does everybody have a fate line?
No, not everybody has a fate line. And not everybody has an Apollo line. Apollo line is just a vertical line that starts under the ring finger. It can start all the way up at the top. It can start halfway down. It can start down near the bottom. You have to know what you're looking for. But because there's also the intuitive line, which some people will think it's like, they've got an Apollo line and they think it's an intuitive line, or vice versa. And so it's like, okay, the intuitive line tends to be curved. All right. The Apollo line tends to be more straight. It's where you have gifts that are meant to have an audience.
Do you find that people with curvy lines, like more curvy lines, tend to, because I want people to be able to look at their hands, like people with like, there's straight lines and curvy lines, right? Like in numerology, there's like the 1 and the 0, and like the 1 tends to be like more logical. So does that show up in our hands?
You just gave an outstanding, but that would be you with that Uranian little finger, communicating things. You can take a concept, and that's what that means when you've got a big gap, by the way, between your.
So all of you who have this like rogue pinky, as I call it, that means that you can communicate like from thin air type
Innovatively.
Okay.
I had a woman who cause she also had an Apollo line. And, I said, oh, you're a storyteller. Cause she had the Mercury, the offset, that pinky that goes off almost to the right, or to the left. And this Apollo line, I said, oh, you're a gifted speaker, gifted storyteller. And she goes, no, I'm not. And I said, well, that's not what I'm seeing. I said, well, what do you do? She goes, I'm a scientist. And I said, tell me more. She took the data, the pharmacological data from different research, and she turned it into materials and then trained the pharmaceutical reps on what the different products did so that they could then explain it to the doctor.
There she is, taking this information. So for people who have a rogue pinky or people who have a pinky close, like what does it say either way? I want everybody get some.
Yeah, if they've got a closer where it's not, if your fingers sit more closely together, that just means that you operate most effectively in the familiar. You can take what's familiar and replicate it, do it. It's like you can be consistent. It's like we need those.
Oh, we definitely need those. We don't want people being like, wee all the time.
Exactly. We need breath in and breath out.
Yeah.
We need action people. We need inspired people. Inspired people may not act on it immediately. It may take some of those people with their fingers more closely, set, that it's like, oh, now that you've shown me how to do it and I know it's safe, I can do it again and again.
People with like very kind of together fingers are very more reliable.
They tend
not to say I'm not reliable. Everybody who knows me knows I'm reliable.
Consistent, where you can something. It's like you can, I know one person that it's like he's a horrible teacher because he can never do anything the same way twice. He'll do the same thing, but he changes it every time. If you're ever trying to learn to do something from him, it's maddening.
Yeah. So would he have a more kind of
he's got the offset pinky. He's got
everything's offset. Everything's like wide and
thumb, which is again a traveler, somebody open. So it's like they experience everything as new again and again. Again, that can be, particularly these days, that can make your mind explode.
It can make your mind explode. Mm-hmm.
People more even set fingers. It's like, oh, thank God.
I know, because right now in the world, I would just look for someone who has those fingers. I'm like, please, I need some consistency. We need some stability. However, people who have like more like, especially the pinky, but like if your fingers like very, open or whatever, you're more of an explorer, and neither is good or bad. It's just like the way you're hardwired, right?
No, if you've got a lot of space, you are hungry for, experience. You part of your job is to learn how to filter what's a healthy experience from an unhealthy experience. Particularly if you've got young kids, and they're wide open, you want to help them learn how to, muscle test or decide so that they're not just freewheeling into every experience.
Yeah, I know what that's about. And then, so the open, cause when this is again, like a bazillion years ago, the way people show you their hand, even before you see their lines, even before you analyze the actual everything, tells you a lot, right?
It does. People who hold their hands, with more of a cup, it's to their palms. These are people who have had their wants and needs. They've been trained out of trusting that their wants and needs will be met in childhood.
Oh, that's like more, please.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, but people will actually hold their hand out and they'll have it kind of cupped. And it's like, there's a feeling inside of them that it's like they don't automatically trust that there is abundance. They didn't receive enough emotional or physical or inspirational reinforcement that it's like, oh yeah, flatten the hand, take it all in. So that cupped hand, and again, the color, the firmness, particularly these days with all of the, interesting health challenges we've had in years. Something that is good to know is how resilient your immune system is. And what you do is you hold your hand, all fingers up, your thumb to the side, tuck your thumb across your palm and roll your fingers over it so that your thumb is like a little hot dog in a bun. And then notice
vegan hot dog.
Yep, exactly. But notice the between the knuckle of the first finger and the thumb, notice how firm the pad is right there. If it's sunken or soft, it means that your immune system is under distress.
Oh, I'm glad to know I've got a nice, me and my criminal thumbs, my stub thumbs, nice and firm.
Wow. And notice the difference between both hands too, because I'm very resilient in my small groups, but out in a big, I was just talking to somebody this morning. He's a client. He suffers from PTSD. He was a soldier, and it's like when he gets out in public, the pad, they call it a mouse. And it's like, oh my gosh. But anyway, the pad there on that thumb, his drops dramatically on his right hand, whereas it doesn't on his left.
Wait, so which part is it that we're touching?
The right hand. Okay. What you're touching right here. Remember, make that vegan hot dog. And then you're touching this part. I don't know. Right here.
That's
between, that part right there. But you want to look more on the top than underneath.
More on the top, like close to the,
like on the back of the hand, like right here. Do you see that? So I'm holding my hand horizontal, and you see I've got a little mouse there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A little mouse.
Yep, exactly.
You keep eating, little mouse.
Yep, and the more, the higher and firmer the mouse, the more resilient your system.
That's good to know.
Okay.
So you can tell people's health. You can tell their childhood.
Yeah, I can tell you're adrenal exhausted, honey.
I know.
Yeah. So, yes.
Me and my acupuncturist are working on that. And how can you tell that?
There's a couple of different indicators. I want to be careful because I really don't.
We'll talk about that later then.
But just the one thing is if you've got a lot of horizontal on your Venus mound.
On your Venus mound. Oh, if there's some horizontal stuff.
If you've got a lot of horizontal lines, have you ever walked into a cloud of gnats?
Mm-hmm. Every day, actually, in my park walk. Uh-huh.
There you go. Your eyes, your nose, your mouth. This is where worry is getting in. It runs your adrenals.
So people with a lot of lines where?
A lot of horizontal lines on your Venus mount. That's that. Your lifeline. Your lifeline starts above your thumb and rolls all the way down to your wrist and ends somewhere down there usually. But if you've got a lot of horizontal lines, that are like, all these threads, it's like walking into a cloud of gnats. And if you've got one or two big worries that you're carrying around, like a sack on your back. So those are the ones that tend to run your cortisol up until your adrenals give up and go, I surrender.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. I hope people are looking at their hands. So can you explain how this all works? I mean, not the whole universe, but
Wow. You're talking to an information geek. What a challenge. The most important thing to realize is that when you change your mind, you change the line. When you think, feel, and act on something at least 21 times in a new way, so it's like not 21 different times, but 21 consistent times, but away from the pattern that's a stressor, you change your mind and change the line. It literally carves out a new neural pathway because this is just really an EEG on your hands.
So what are these lines on the hands? What are they?
And here's the really fun part. I was invited to do the several big events. I'm here in Hollywood. The Stunt Emmys invited me and I went, oh, I want to go check this out.
That sounds like fun.
So I wanted anecdotal evidence because there's portions of your brain that the nerves end in these certain regions that actually correspond. I'm fascinated with the fact that 3,000 years ago in Egypt and China, they were mapping out brain function in the hand.
Oh my goodness.
Astrology, palmistry, it's like there's so much more knowledge than we know. But it's like I show up and the Mars line right here, the one that starts above the thumb and sometimes makes a little wishbone with your lifeline, you know, but that Mars line travels through a region that corresponds with the risk taking in your brain.
Wow.
So I said, okay, there was 14 people standing there and I said, okay, don't anybody tell me anything. I want you to really, keep a straight face here. I want to go around and do risk assessment on each one of you. And then when I'm done, you can say how close or how far. I want to see if it really correlates, And so the second guy in was Big Dave.
Oh my gosh.
7. He's like a wall of human, not an ounce of fat on him. And I'm looking at his hands and I'm going, that's interesting. I said, you're actually very calculated. You're more of an architect than a risk taker. And nobody says a word. I get all the way around. And the very last person, this little spark plug, she's about 5 foot nothing, solid muscle, and a little bob cut. And she's sitting there holding her hand up. And I went, oh, I said, I'm not getting in any vehicle that you drive. And at that point that I was done, they fell out laughing.
I was going to say, I bet they would be if they knew each other.
She did the stunts on 2 Mission Impossibles because she would do motorcycle stunts that nobody else would touch.
Wow.
Okay. And Big Dave was a civil engineer who was a stunt coordinator. He did the risk testing.
Oh, that is so good.
So it's like, it does correlate with our brain biology. So when I say you think, feel, and act on something in a new way, you retrain your brain. And that's the best way to take the information that I share with you. We've got your potential mapped out in your chart. We've got your hands. And then you can use that information to start replacing what doesn't work with thoughts, feelings, and actions in harmony to reprogram.
So have you worked with people over time and you see changes in their hands?
I just recently taught a class and I'll be doing it again in the fall. And it's all about Thrive in 25, but it's all about using what you've got in your hands. And some of the people from the beginning to the end of the class, and it was, 7 weeks, they even saw, you can see color changes because the blood flow. It's like, if you're really passionate about something, you would see color changes almost immediately.
Wow.
But over time, it's like 21 repetitions. It's like, yep, there were changes. And I've changed my hands. My nephew, he had 2 marriage lines and he was the child of divorce. And he said, Auntie Lisa, I don't want to get divorced. I said, let's look at how you act in relationships. Let's take a look at what your triggers are and your responses. And he took it very seriously and he came back and it wasn't even 20 months, not even 2 years. And he had almost completely faded the second marriage line. And I can say he's happily married for the first.
So you saw 2 potential marriage. So what is a marriage line and how do you see it in the hand?
I want to be careful here because people can go a little crazy.
Oh yeah. Should we like,
no, just put this caveat out there. Okay. Remember, you can change your mind and change your line. And there are some people who have significant relationships. When I say significant relationships, it used to be at least a 3-year relationship. Well, now people are packing a lot of thought and emotion into shorter term relationships. So, one woman came in and she had 6 lines. And I'm just going, that doesn't mean 6 marriages. It's up to you. Okay.
These things on the side of your hand.
Yeah. If you curl, it's like curling your fingers over, just not making a fist, or actually, you know what? Don't even do it that way because that's going to confuse the people who are just listening. Just look at the outside of your hand. You're on your pinky side where there's a line where your palm meets your pinky.
I have one big line.
Okay. That's one long marriage.
And I've been with my husband 30 years.
There you go. Yeah. And see, but you look for your heart line. So the area between your heart line and the line where your Mercury finger, your pinky finger joins the palm, that little, 3/4 of an inch or a half inch, that's where the horizontal lines tend to be significant relationships.
And then so if you have a potential for 2, okay. We don't want people, it's kind of like Dr. Google. I don't want to get people all
But you can change it. But this is why I'm saying my nephew changed the fact that he had 2 marriage lines.
So basically you're saying because these lines are the map of our brain.
Yep.
They're basically like showing what our brain is doing.
Exactly. They're
including
showing us
worry and health and adrenal stuff.
Yep. The combination of thinking, feeling, acting on things is what shows up in your hand. So consequently, you can map out what, because it's like, particularly when you're stuck in Groundhog Day, it's like, oh, well, this can be something that can really help you map your way out of it gently. I will say this, you can't rush long-term results. And I got to tell you, my curved up heart lines, you can be really good in the moment, but it can be harder for you to be consistent.
Are you talking about people like me with curved up heart lines?
That's what I was going to say, but that's where your Saturn line helps, Kari.
Yeah.
It helps keep you anchored when, my curved up heart lines, it can be a little bit the bright, shiny thing. It's like, ooh, there's something else here. And ooh, you're great every time you do it, but you don't necessarily consistently do the same thing. You need some support around you to make sure that you do.
Mm-hmm. So basically, I don't even know if people understand why people do things like palmistry, hand analysis, or tarot, or astrology. I think even among people who are listening to this, if you haven't had enough experience with it, there's so much out there that makes it seem like fortune telling.
Yeah.
Especially the palmistry.
Yeah.
Can you explain what it is and what it isn't?
Yes. And a friend just sent me some TikTok videos, and I've not been willing at this point to go on TikTok, but I think I've got to make some videos because it's so fatalistic what's being said out there. And again, I want to go back to what good palmistry or hand analysis should be pointing out by all means what your patterns are. But old school palmistry, like I saw somebody talking about the fact that, there was a mark on the hand that meant you were suicidal and, and just going, actually, that mark means that you have got an inherited overlay that's headed one direction. So it's like you've got, there's, whether it's culture, whether it's family tradition, religion, you've got something sending you in one direction when your core wants to go in a different direction. And there's this fundamental clash that you can feel like you have to sacrifice your individuality to belong.
And you can see that in somebody's hand?
Yes. And it's like, that does not, yes, it can make some people suicidal, but again, if you're not talking about thought, feeling, action as a brain function, that's mapping all of this, it's like we feel it. There's molecules of emotion that travel our nervous system that take roughly 10 minutes. Dr. Candace Pert identified them. It's like, oh, so the brain is just a routing switch back to it's the one that's supposed to map things third. First, you intuitively sense it. Then you get clear on what you feel, and then you start mapping out the strategy. So good palmistry or hand analysis, or even good astrology, is support. They're like handrails to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. If anyone is deciding or handing out a verdict or putting a label on you, not a fan of that. It's not been my experience. I've seen people do incredible things when they apply, the right formula for them. And that's ultimately decided by you. I can point to where there's an ease or a challenge, but some people need a challenge, like a plane lifting off. Some people need it to be easy. You decide. That is not something anybody should be deciding for you.
So hand analysis, astrology, tarot, they could be used for forecasting in terms of like weather, like this is where you're headed and these are the potentialities. However, people like you and me, the coaches, intuitive coach, intuitive counselor people, utilize it to help you understand your conflicts, your potentials, your gifts, your challenges, right?
Yes. When there's that offset little finger restating things beautifully. Yes. And then using you to, again, I love, cause again, I've got the fixation with maps and globes, but it's like the right person for you will help you map your way. You've got support. You've got guidelines. You've got 360 miles to the next town, kind of thing. It's just things that based on the tools that and that you also both gifted because you're that visionary leader. Here's the thing you have to remember. It may not turn out the way you think it is because as soon as you start interacting with it, it changes and it opens up possibilities. So even if somebody's intuitively giving you a picture, they're giving you a picture based on where you're standing right in this moment, but you're not static.
That's right. That's right. So you can change your thoughts and responses.
The information you give Kari, you're giving somebody an intuitive guidance that's already making their experience bigger than what you just looked at, right?
Yeah. So when someone would come to you, they'll learn about themselves. And I feel like people don't understand because we're not taught that we have a map.
Right. That we all have intuition, but there's so many stories about what it is and it isn't. This is such a rich time because we've got, Saturn and Neptune at the 0 Aries point.
Yeah.
So it really is a rich time for people to understand their intuition is always available to them. They've got to map out how they want to use it. And who better to go to than people who've been using their own intuitive guidance for a while in different ways. It's just somebody it's like, yep, I've been down that road.
Like you go to a dentist who studied it. Because I think it's funny because I think people think that they don't need help in this way. I'm not saying that everyone should go to a palm reader or an astrologer or an intuitive. I am saying that there are misconceptions about what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful to have someone see where you are, where you came from, and where you're headed.
Yes. With, again, the coaches, it's like neutral, that it's like, here's what I see. That's what you're engaging with me for. This is what I see. What are you going to do with it?
That's right. So it's not denying someone their free will, and nothing's fatalistic. I think because palm reading, palmistry, hand analysis has so much stigma that it's like this weird thing when it's actually in many ways the most scientific.
Like I said, once I got to do the stunt Emmys, it's just like, okay, you've now convinced me. The correlation, it's like, it can be that accurate.
Yeah.
The risk taking, version. It's like, I can only imagine that there's some pretty good correlations with the other parts. Jupiter is the part of you that invites and expands, the new experiences. The left hand pulls it to you. The right hand, points it out. Kind of thing. And it's just like for you, the numbers, they talk.
They're all oracles and we have so many tools, and thankfully you are using so many tools, but we have tools that I want to make sure that people know are available and utilize, because life can seem very rudderless, or sometimes like, what's the point, the meaning of it? Like, what is this experiment about? But when you see how divinely designed everything is, like every line in your hand has a meaning, every pressure point in your hand. It's not just like for acupuncture or like, acupressure purposes. It's like for real, like this is telling you something about what is happening inside of you. The planets are archetypes. Tarot is archetypes, like lucid dreaming. So people have tools. You have tools. Everyone listening, you have tools. And you also have people that help you understand these tools.
Yeah. And right now, with that Saturn and Neptune in Aries, there are people who it's like, well, I can do this, and don't even get me started on ChatGPT. And it's just like, there's some wonderful tools in that too. You just want to understand what you're working with, you know? And if you're drawn to have a conversation with somebody, it's because, again, it's no different than a pilgrim who's walked down, you know, a path. It's like, I know this street.
Yeah, Sherpas, right? Mm-hmm.
I know where the cliff is. I know where the poison ivy is. I know, you know, I will share with you what I know. You do with it what you will. That doesn't supersede your experience and your knowing. It just gives you some support. That's what it's really good, you know, for the wise use of your power is to access other people who resonate with you and see what you can learn, that because if you are drawn to something, it means you've got your version of it.
Yeah. I love it because you seek the people that can help you at the time. I hope that this has helped make clear to people like how accurate, like how divinely designed, like every hair on our head is, everything about your life is so connected to the divine and to everything. So I thank you for illustrating that so beautifully.
Oh, you're welcome. It's such a pleasure. As you can tell, I'm passionate about this, and I love somebody else who's that passionate.
Lisa, we're going to share your information, how people can get in touch with you in a moment. However, I always like to end with a magic lesson, something people can take with them to learn more about themselves and their own divinity that they can integrate easily. So do you have a magic lesson that I'm sure you have 1,000 magic lessons, but what comes to you now as the magic lesson you'd like to share?
I really, really, really want to encourage people to understand that whatever isn't working, you know, and even the unknown, it's if you go back to in this moment, that's all I have to do. What do I feel? What do I need? And then be willing to think, feel, and act on it in a little bit different way. It doesn't have to be radically different, just a little bit different. It is extraordinary. That 1% adjustment of checking in and then being willing to do it just a little different. See it a little, you've got a fear story in your mind, or you've got a worst case scenario that just won't go away. You know, it's like, okay, every time that worst case comes up, I'm going to bookend it with the best case because one is just as possible as the other. And then it gives you a navigation feel. And when you operate from there, that 1% is the difference between heading North America or South America when you leave from the opposite continent.
Yeah, I love that. And it's these incremental changes that are the most powerful.
They're magical. They're not as dramatic. Trust me, I could, you know, go with some big magic stories. Don't be afraid to ask for signs. I've had some spectacular versions of that. But honestly, what is so important right now is to get really grounded in the magic of you having the ability to impact where you wind up and how you get there.
The magic of you.
Yeah, the incremental changes. You can do this. It's like there's a whole new continent waiting for you to explore.
And you have to listen to your heart to do that. That's the top line, baby. The top line.
Exactly. And don't forget, you know, sometimes when you sense that intuitive hit that there's something around the corner, if your heart doesn't beat faster or it doesn't keep going back to it, the best thing you can do is look around you and see who you can tap on the shoulder and go, I think there's something interesting there, and let them go explore. So everybody's in their own lane with their heart dictating. Because it's like when you're in your heart, the electromagnetic field is 3,000 to 5,000 times greater than your mind.
Yeah, that's scientific.
Yeah.
See, all this stuff is science. It's not just like...
It's not woo-woo anymore.
Yeah, it's actual science. So listen to that heart line. Lisa, tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Truthinhand.com. And it's truthinhand.com.
Truthinhand.com.
And if you sign up for the newsletter, you get the lunar report, and you also get an introductory offer to make it really easy to say yes to a little snapshot of you.
Oh my gosh. And I hope people take Lisa up on that, because there's so many snapshots. She's got so much truth in her heart and her mind and her hands. So truthinhand.com. This is Lisa Greenfield. Are you on Instagram or YouTube?
It's My Truth in Hand on Instagram. Mostly, I write the monthly forecast for e-news. And so I usually post e-news on Instagram.
E-news, like those, like people like, hi, what are you wearing? That e-news.
They do a forecast. They want their astrology shoppable. So based on what your astrology is, I'm happy to suggest a little retail therapy. I don't pick the products. I just pick, what would be soothing.
Yeah. So they go to you for astrology, not because you're all the things, right? Yeah. You are an oracle. We thank you, Oracle. We thank you, Lisa. Whoa. Thank you. This was a joy. I'm sure that people enjoyed hearing from your wisdom.
Thank you for making it possible in this platform. Your passion, you're clearly a visionary leader and you're meant to reach a lot of people. So
thank you. I just have to heal those adrenals because I've been visionary leading too much.
You let the tide carry you up and down so that you get natural rest periods.
Yeah, that's right? For everybody if you need it. Anyway, yes. So much love to you, Lisa, and so much love to you listening. And if you've enjoyed this as well, please make sure to like, subscribe, rate, review, all the things. It helps us find people. It helps people find people like us, right? So that we can help the world more. Anyway, love you, Lisa, and love you all listening. Thank you so much. Bye for now.